And we have confirmation the second set of hooks has closed from Dragon on the International Space Station, meaning hard capture is complete.
Dragon Station, hard capture complete.
Dragon copies.
And with that call, hard capture is complete. Dragon is firmly attached to the International Space Station. It's home for at least the next 8 days. NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg on the space station side will now move into preparing the hatches for opening. Again, that takes about a 2-hour process. The vestibule needs to be pressurized, the area in between the space station and Dragon. Coming up, the AX-2 crew will have the chance to doff or take off their spacesuits, maybe get into their flight suits before they float aboard, and we begin our welcome ceremony.
And Dragon SpaceX docking sequence complete. Crew Dragon Freedom, Peggy, John, Ali, Ray, congrats on this historic achievement. Welcome to the International Space Station.
Thanks. We really appreciated flying with SpaceX. It was a lovely ride, and as I mentioned, it was the softest docking I've ever felt. Very well done. Thanks to everyone for getting us this far.
Thanks, Peggy. We do aim for excellence, and on behalf of SpaceX, it's been a pleasure working with you. And just a little bit of trivia for you, this was the fastest launch to dock time for a Crew Dragon, beating our previous record from Crew 4 by just 9 minutes. Ground will be enabling hardline power and comm connections shortly, and you are good to doff suits per procedure 4.012. Ground will be taking cameras external.
Copy 4012, in work.
Dragon on Dragon to ground, no response required. Cameras are external.
Now that all the hooks have driven and the soft capture ring has been stowed, docking is officially complete. The crew is go to doff their suits. That's why the teams on the ground have told them that the cameras are not live at this time inside the cabin. Again, we still do not have video from the International Space Station at this time. It looks like we'll regain shortly. The space station itself is in an orbital nighttime, now flying 261 statute miles over the Pacific Ocean. Again, docking this morning at 8:12 a.m. Central Time. As noted by SpaceX, the fastest docking on record for a crew launch to the International Space Station on Dragon. We also have confirmation that the umbilicals have attached from Dragon to the International Space Station. Again, these allow power to flow from the space station to Dragon, as well as data and other telemetry. When in free flight, Dragon uses power gained from its solar arrays and is stored and used from batteries aboard the spacecraft, so connecting to these umbilicals allows it to rely on power generated from the space station. We'll stay live now that we have docked until our welcome ceremony, standing by for the start time for that ceremony. But this hatch open process takes about 2 hours. A look ahead at the steps that will be happening over the next couple of hours. Again, Woody Hoberg, NASA astronaut on the space station, is prime for these operations and bringing the AX-2 crew on board. Now that we're docked, he is securing some hardware, and then we'll move into hatch operations. First, he will open the large hatch at Node 2 Zenith. That'll give him access inside the pressurized mating adapter. He will then help pressurize the vestibule. That's, again, the small space between the hatches on Dragon and the space station. Of course, this was previously exposed to a vacuum prior to docking. We need to fill it with air, make sure its pressure is nearly equal with the atmospheric pressures on Dragon and the station.
Com check on the cabin mic.
And Dragon SpaceX, I had you 5x5 on the cabin mic, but I am seeing that you have both ground and ISS set to PTT. Please set it to only the big loop.
Okay, on the big loop, cabin mic from Dragon.
And I have you 5x5. How me?
5x5, thanks.
Station on 2 for PMA 3 ingress step 1.
Houston is with you on 2.
All right, just looking for your go in step 1.1.
Standby 1, and we are checking on that now.
Station copies.
As you heard, teams on the ground communicating with the crew still aboard Dragon Freedom. Peggy Whitson took a chance to test out the cabin mic rather than the microphones they'd been using
Station
in their
Houston, on
suits
the
now
big
that
loop,
they've
you are
doffed
go
those.
for 1.1 of procedure 2.102.
Copy, go in step 1.1 of 2.102.
And that voice being NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg communicating with Justin Cartledge here on the ground, his Capcom, the capsule communicator. That's the person speaking with the astronauts aboard the International Space Station. Woody is now stepping through some procedures, including he will get access inside the pressurized mating adapter and then pressurize the vestibule. We want to make sure the pressure is almost equal with the pressures on board Dragon and the station. He'll use a small valve on the station's hatch to slowly introduce air into the vestibule. Flight controllers here in Houston will monitor the pressure and temperature readings inside and verify that everything is leak-free before we get ready to open the hatches. Again, it's about a 2-hour process to get everything pressurized and checked out before we open the hatches. And following that hatch open, we'll have a welcoming ceremony with all 4 AX-2 astronauts, as well as our 7 crew members living aboard the station. So if it's not too early for you to do some math, yes, that is 11 people that'll be living aboard the International Space Station for at least the next week.
Houston Station, node 2 overhead, hatch open.
Houston copies.
Again, we are live covering the arrival of the AX-2 crew to the International Space Station. This is the second private astronaut mission that has visited the International Space Station following Axiom 1 flight last year. Our crew members aboard Dragon Freedom today include former NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson. Up until now, she has spent 665 days in space, so she's looking to add to that total. It's more than any U.S. astronaut and more than any woman in the world. She's joined by pilot John Schaffner. And the 2 mission specialists representing the Saudi Space Commission are Ali Al-Karni and Rayana Barnawi.
Houston Station on 2, we're ready for step 2.2 on your go.
Checking. You are go at 2.2.
Copy, go.
As we hear NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg stepping through the procedures with the grounds go, he will begin pressurizing the vestibule shortly. In the meantime, NASA astronaut Frank Rubio continues to conduct some hardware servicing on the space station.
SpaceX on the big loop. If desired, reference procedure 4.400 for monitoring vestibule pressurization.
Confirmation from teams on the ground that vestibule pressurization has begun. Again, this is the small space between the Dragon hatch and the space station hatch. We want to bring that up from vacuum to about 14.7 psi. That's about the same pressure as the International Space Station, approximately the same pressure we're used to here on Earth. Astronauts on the space station live in a mixed nitrogen-oxygen environment, again, very similar to what we have on Earth.
And Dragon station on the big loop, no response required. ISS power connection established.
Station on 2, step 2.4, A pass pressure equalized at 13:39 GMT.
Houston copies 13:39 GMT.
You can see some movement, and we have our view back of Dragon. As we see a sunrise in the background, this view of Dragon Freedom with the AX-2 crew aboard docked to the Node 2 Zenith port on the International Space Station. Again, that docking coming at 8:12 a.m. Central Time. The crew inside are now out of their suits. They are preparing for ingress to the International Space Station. Again, this is a process, though, so we are pressurizing the vestibule, the space between the two spacecraft. And if you see some color changes, that's because the International Space Station and Dragon are now flying into an orbital sunrise. They are 268 statute miles over the South Pacific Ocean. Now that they're docked, these two will travel 17,500 miles per hour together, seeing 16 sunrises and sunsets a day. So the AX-2 crew is certainly in for a treat for their planned 8-day stay. Here in Mission Control Houston, teams are handing over from the Orbit 1 shift to the Orbit 2 shift. We have had Marcos Flores as our flight director this morning. He will be handing over to Vincent Laporte. Again, Woody Hoberg aboard the International Space Station is leading the team's...
Freedom, Houston, stand by for hardline audio config.
Freedom is standby.
NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg working to pressurize the vestibule, the space between the hatches. Again, this takes about 2 hours before the crew members float aboard the International Space Station. All 4 Axiom 2 crew members still in Dragon Freedom, as you see there, docked to the Node 2 Zenith port. Once they float aboard, they will conduct a welcome ceremony with all crew members before heading into a safety briefing. These private astronauts trained for many contingency scenarios down here on the ground, but the teams aboard the International Space Station will help show them different locations and procedures now that they are on orbit. Later today, the Dragon Freedom crew will work to transfer some cargo from Dragon to the International Space Station. That includes some of the scientific research they'll be doing this week, as well as hardware or food needed.
Freedom Houston on the big loop for a comm check. Hardline audio configuration is complete.
Freedom has you loud and clear on the big loop hardline.
Good news.
And Dragon SpaceX on the big loop, permission to come on board with cameras.
You come on board now, but we'll probably have to ask you to go away again in a little bit. Welcome aboard.
Copy that. We'll keep them exterior until you're ready.
Okay, thank you.
Recently, you heard a call from Mission Control in Hawthorne at SpaceX headquarters, checking with the crew to see if they could turn cameras on the spacecraft. They'll hold off for a little bit longer on that, but we still have all 4 crew members aboard. It has now been 41 minutes since they docked to the Node 2 Zenith port, making their official arrival at the International Space Station. On the space station side, NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg is preparing the APAS hatch for opening.
And SpaceX Dragon on the big loop, just to let you know, we've got all four suits drying. The shortest timer is at passing 7 minutes right now.
Copy all, 4 suits drying, and 7 minutes have elapsed. And Dragon with suits drying, I can give you a go for sections 1 through 3 of 4.400.
Copy 1 through 3 of 4.400.
Again, you're watching live coverage of the AX-2 crew arrival at the International Space Station. The crew docked Dragon Freedom to the Node 2 zenith-facing port this morning at 8:12 a.m. Central Time.
Dragon,
and that
this
view,
is Ray for food inventory and water inventory.
Copy that, Ray. Ready to copy for inventory.
203, 5 bottles. 207, 4 bottles. For food, 305, 1 meal and a snack. 313, 1 meal and a snack. 307, 1 meal and a snack. 315, 1 meal and a snack.
Copy that, and to read back, we have 5 bottles from 203, 4 bottles from 207, 1 meal and 1 snack from locations 305, 313, 307, and 315.
Good copy. Thank you.
Thank you.
as you just heard, Saudi Space Commission astronaut Rayana Barnawi reporting out the inventory aboard Crew Dragon. Everything is meticulously tracked aboard the space station and Dragon as well, so she was reporting which meals and snacks had been consumed during their approximate 16-hour flight from launch last night at 5:37 p.m. Eastern Time to docking this morning at 9:12 a.m. Eastern Time. Again, you're watching live coverage of the AX-2 arrival at the International Space Station, the second private astronaut mission to visit the space station following the Axiom 1 flight last year. Currently aboard Dragon Freedom, which you see on your screen, attached to the station's Node 2 Zenith port, are Commander Peggy Whitson, pilot John Schaffner, and mission specialists Ali Alkarni and Rihanna Barnawi. On the space station side, NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg is working to
And
pressurize
Dragon
the...
SpaceX on the big loop for procedure 4.400.
Go for 4.400.
Hey, so we're getting close to finishing the leak check, but you have a go to perform Section 5 for the dock waste system configuration.
Okay, go for Section 5. We'll try and get all the other activities out of the way first and get that in work.
Copy all.
We heard Peggy Whitson earlier say that the crew has doffed their suits. They are now in probably their flight suits ahead of heading into the International Space Station. We're expecting that around 10 a.m. Central Time for those hatches to open. They are drying their suits currently, just keeping them in good shape ahead of a trip home. They're planning on about an 8-day stay aboard the International Space Station. However, several things can affect that departure date, mainly the weather at the landing location. SpaceX has a number of select landing locations off the coast of Florida. And we watch for things like wave height or wave cadence, as well as wind speeds, to ensure that the crew have the safest and most comfortable landing possible.
Station Houston on the big loop. We have a good leak check. ISS is go to complete vestibule equalization and open the APAS hatch at step 3.1 of procedure 2.102.
All right, station copies go in 3.1.
For those of you just joining our coverage of Axiom 2 crew in our SpaceX Dragon Freedom capsule, which is what you see there on your screen, has successfully docked to the International Space Station. In fact, we had a new record time for SpaceX operations. We actually beat the Crew 4 record from liftoff to soft capture. Our record time now is about 15 hours and 35 minutes from liftoff to soft capture. So basically the most efficient and fastest transit to the International Space Station from Pad 39A. That's a beautiful view there of that Dragon Freedom capsule. This is docked at the Node 2 Zenith port. The Crew 6 capsule, until about a couple weeks ago, was docked to this same port, and we did a port relocation maneuver with the Crew 6 crew to move it down to the Node 2 forward port. By doing so, we were able to clear this Zenith port for the AX-2 mission, as well as the upcoming CRS-28 cargo resupply mission. Although it might look stagnant if you look at it quickly, we can see planet Earth rotating slowly behind, or rather under, the Dragon capsule and the International Space Station. There at the bottom of the screen, you can kind of make out the Canada arm, which is the robotic arm that the crew on board station will utilize in order to remove cargo from the unpressurized section of Dragon located in the trunk, which is essentially the top half, in this orientation, the top half of the Dragon capsule. Of course, when we are sitting at the launch pad or other conventional views of Dragon, it's the bottom half of Dragon. But really, it's that half black, half white cylindrical portion of Dragon that we see there. This view is also great because you get a really clear view of the nose cone and all of the hardware that the nose cone protects during the launch phase. Of course, we got some ambient noise here at SpaceX headquarters as our first shift operations are well underway. During the ascent phase, that nose cone will be closed, and that protects the forward hatch as well as the forward bulkhead Draco thrusters. So right now, the Axiom 2 crew, they have taken their suits off. We heard the call out earlier that the suits are drying. And as you can see, the Dragon capsule is docked, and they have completed pressurization of the APAS hatch. So we are making great progress. But talking about the crew, let's get to learn a little bit more about them in case you may have missed our introductions earlier in the broadcast, as we've been going for a little bit while. So let's learn more about the AX-2 crew.
Yeah, it's always good to get a little refresher on our AX-2 crew here. The AX-2 mission is commanded by retired NASA astronaut Peggy Whitson. Born and raised in Beaconsfield, Iowa, she was inspired along with the world when she watched the Apollo 11 crew walk on the moon. She has since become the most experienced American astronaut and one of the most decorated. Whitson flew 3 long-duration missions to the ISS and has more cumulative time in space, 665 days, than any U.S. astronaut and more than any woman in the world. She has conducted 10 spacewalks with over 60 hours of time and has performed hundreds of research experiments on board the ISS. Not only is she the commander for this mission, but Peggy also serves as the director of human spaceflight for Axiom Space.
The pilot for AX-2 is private astronaut John Schaffner. Born in Alaska and raised in Kentucky, Schaffner is a STEAM education advocate, business pioneer, and lifelong space enthusiast. A pilot since the age of 17, John has over 8,500 flight hours holding commercial, instrument, single-engine, and multi-engine ratings in land and sea aircraft, as well as helicopter. He also holds ratings in former military jets and high-performance radial engine aircraft. As an athlete, John has years of competitive experience in water skiing, cycling, whitewater kayaking, hang gliding, skydiving, and base jumping. John trained as the AX-1 backup pilot, and during this mission on AX-2, plans to invest a lot of his time in STEAM education activities aimed at empowering educators and inspiring teachers.
And representing the Saudi Space Commission and serving as a mission specialist, Ali Al-Qarni was born in March 1992 in Sabt al-Alaya, Saudi Arabia. Ali is fluent in English as well as his native Arabic, and as an Air Force captain, has 12 years of experience flying on multiple aircraft, primarily on the F-15SA in service to the Royal Saudi Air Force. Ali graduated with a Bachelor of Aerospace Science degree in 2013 from King Faisal Air Academy in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
Also representing the Saudi Space Commission and serving as a mission specialist, Rayana Barnawi, or as we hear her identify herself as Ray on comms, was born in September 1988 in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia. Rayana has a master's degree in biomedical sciences from Al Faisal University in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, and a bachelor's degree in biomedical sciences from Otago University in Dunedin, New Zealand. She is fluent in English and Turkish, as well as native Arabic. She has been a research lab technician since 2013 in the Stem Cell and Tissue Re-Engineering Program at King Faisal Specialist Hospital and Research Center, and located in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia.
And there they are, the AX-2 crew. We are so excited for them to now be docked to the ISS, and so proud that they've made it this far after all their training. This is a really wonderful moment to be celebrating their journey to space.
Yeah, obviously Peggy, a NASA legend, has spent years training to go to space. Our 3 formerly space newbies, now that they are up there and now docked to the International Space Station. Can't really call them rookies anymore. But yeah, all 4 of them have been training extensively for this mission, and it's so great to see that they get to use it now.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And on those cards, you may have seen their patch on their flight suits. And since the beginning of the space race in the 1960s, a custom patch has been used to represent and identify individual missions and their crews. It's also a long-held custom that these crews influence or even outright design their own patches, injecting them with symbolism and personal elements to commemorate their journey. This crew has continued this long-standing tradition with their official AX-2 mission patch, so let's take a look. The AX-2 mission patch highlights the beauty of space, hope for the future.
Station on 2, the pass hatch is open with negative condensation.
Oh.
That is great news.
Houston copies.
Sounds like a hatch open update. Okay, continuing on this patch. This patch highlights the beauty of space, hope for the future, and the important role of the ISS to unite the best aspects of humanity. Shown prominently are the mission name, AX-2, the family names of the crew members, and the flags of the United States and the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, the two nations represented on board today's flight. There are 5 shapes drawn as constellations, and these represent the crew's intention to focus on inspiration, education, and teaching through STEAM education initiatives. And so there's a constellation for science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. The arched path leading from Earth to space is colored lavender, which is culturally significant in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, symbolizing hospitality. That arched path and color also reflect KSA's desire to be part of the space sector and position itself as a contributor to the global space community. Then, naturally, the space station is central to the image as the destination of this crew, while Earth is featured with prominent horizon lines symbolizing optimism, hope, and inspiration. Just as you see this mission patch worn by the crew on their flight suits, this patch is currently adorning the walls of Axiom Space's mission control in Houston and is placed in a position of honor everywhere this crew is being supported for the duration of their mission.
As someone that is an engineer, but I have a background in music and theater and art, I have a personal appreciation for just how evident and apparent the emphasis on STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics. It's been a long morning. I think I got those letters in the right order. But yeah, it's so great to see all of that represented so strongly on the AX-2 mission patch. I love it. It's one of my favorite mission patches that we've had. Now let's turn it back over to NASA's Leah Cheshire, who is standing by at Mission Control Center at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, for an update on space station operations. Leah?
Thanks, Kate and Duke. Yes, we are still here in International Space Station Flight Control Room at Johnson Space Center in Houston, Texas, continuing to monitor the arrival of the AX-2 crew and their eventual welcome to the International Space Station. Again, we docked at 8:12 a.m. Central Time this morning, so a little over an hour ago, to the Node 2 Zenith, or space-facing port, which is where you see the crew now. They are flying over the country of Chad, 256 miles above Earth. And those calls you heard about the hatch, those are the A-Pass hatch and the vestibule hatch. NASA astronaut Woody Hoberg is stepping through hatch procedures this morning. He's currently in the A-Pass hatch, and I looked it up to make sure to get it right for all of you. A-Pass stands for Androgynous Peripheral Assembly System. I think it's pretty clear why we call it A-Pass, keep it short and sweet. But that hatch has been opened. He is inside, and he has also opened the vestibule hatch. So the Dragon hatch is not open yet. We've still got some things that we need to work through on the SpaceX side as well as on the NASA side to make sure that we're ready to welcome the AX-2 crew members aboard.